You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report podcast number 353.1, the Fight Report with Hanson Crafton. This week, Hanson and I talk about the UFC's huge deal with Paramount Plus, $7.7 billion deal. We also preview this weekend's fights in the UFC 319, and a big boxing card in Saudi Arabia with a couple of big heavyweight fights.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengels.
Welcome, fight fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report and Hanson Crafton's Fight Report. It is a big weekend in the fight world. What this week will be remembered for is the deal that the UFC signed with Paramount Plus, and it kind of changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. New landscape in the fight world. Pay-per-view is over with the UFC.
Yeah, done.
It's interesting to see how it goes from there. I'm hoping that with this deal, I know they signed 7 years, it was like $7.7 billion.
That's right.
So hopefully a lot of that goes to the fighters. I know it's one topic that's been discussed a lot is how the UFC fighters are underpaid.
And we will definitely talk about that, Hanson. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit more about the agreement and what's going on. TKO, which owns the UFC, signed, according to Reuters, which is the first to report it, that Amazon Prime / Paramount Plus has signed a $7.7 billion deal with the UFC. And yes, it's Paramount Plus, but you would have to assume that Amazon's going to be a big part of this, right? Maybe not streaming wise, but at least promotion wise.
Yeah, and I think CBS is also going to be a part of it.
That's right. Yeah, Paramount Plus is a streaming service of CBS.
So I think it's going to be a big deal. It should bring a lot more exposure to the fights. Now everybody's going to get to watch them. You can watch them on CBS, or if you get the Paramount Plus, then you'll be able to watch everything. Plus, I think they're even going to put their library on there as well.
That's right. All past fights are on there, too. It starts January 1st, 2026. Every single UFC event will be streamed on Paramount Plus. Some will also be seen on CBS, as you mentioned. There will be no more pay-per-view. That's the big deal. And it will take a Paramount Plus subscription to get the UFC now. And I don't know how much that is now, but it's not. Any serious UFC fan is going to be happy to pay it.
Right, exactly.
Not a ton of money. Not like just shelling out just for one pay-per-view could cost you triple figures.
Yeah, I mean, some of them, if you count the monthly subscription to the ESPN Plus and the $70 pay-per-view, I mean, you're looking at $85 for one fight.
That's right. And so, as you mentioned, this is a great deal for the fans. It's obviously a great deal for Dana White and his partners. And the question you had is this going to be a great deal for the fighters? And the bottom line is, Hanson, it has to. I know Dana White really believes in his model of coming up from nothing and fighting for basically nothing until you become big time. But you would hope that at least this would help with some of, short careers, obviously, and very damaging careers. So maybe this can help them. And I think the fans need to demand it now.
I hope so. It's going to bring a lot more exposure to these guys. So a lot of these guys are, more eyes are going to be on the fights. But just, a lot of the contracts had pay-per-view points built into them. So I'm wondering to see what they do with those guys who are already on current deals with the UFC, to see what their contracts look like going forward now that there is no pay-per-view. So there'll be no pay-per-view points added to their contracts.
All right, Hanson, this is a little bit of speculation, things like this, because I know you and I have talked about this with boxing. I also think it would really work in the UFC. Now that they have a new model, I think they need one event, a single giant event, a Super Bowl of UFC, so to speak, that ends the season. It could even the season could begin again the next week with certain fights, but something that's a tournament type of thing, maybe a points type of thing, where at the end of the year, however, wherever you want to put that, everybody's fighting for championships. 8 men, 3 women championships, all within a month. It's just something that I think would be incredible, especially if you did it during the summer when there's not a whole lot else going on. That might turn this into a next level sport.
I completely agree. Used to before, I know Dana says that he's had to make so many events throughout the year now because he has so many fighters. But used to, when it was coming up and there wasn't that many fighters, they didn't have pay-per-views every month. It was like every other month, maybe every 3 months. They would do stuff like that. You would have one card that would be just stacked. And I know they try to do that with the 100 when you get to like 100, 200, 300,
Right.
but that's just not yearly. I definitely agree. I think yearly they should have something. They used to do International Fight Week, which was in July in the summertime, but these cards they just do so many. They've all got kind of watered down. Even International Fight Week will put together a decent card, but nothing like what we're talking about, where you have multiple belts on the line. Maybe do a Friday night, Saturday night thing where you have all
Right.
your belts on the line in two
Two
cards.
different locations.
I definitely would like to see that. I know probably about 5 years ago, they did a weekend where they did a Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. Or it might have been Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. I can't remember the 3 days exactly, but they did do that one time. They did a card. One night they did an Ultimate Fighter card, which had a women's title fight as the main event. And then they did a lightweight title fight on either Friday, and then on Saturday night they had a main card. I think it was UFC 200, and it was loaded with multiple title fights as well. So they have done something like that before, and I'm wondering now with TKO, because they also have bought WWE, and that's kind of something they've been doing lately, is doing a whole weekend, doing a Saturday night, Sunday
Right.
night. So maybe they will take that style from them, and we may get a weekend where they do multiple cards on one weekend. That would be something that
A
I think
championship
would be
weekend.
just great. Yeah, I mean, I think the fans would love that.
Even if you did it for over a month and you had all 11 championships decided, even in a month, it would be, I think, a huge deal. And then you start the new season the next week.
Getting away from the ESPN Plus deal, I know one thing that was a part of the deal with the ESPN Plus is every pay-per-view had to be headlined by a title fight. And so now they don't have to spread out all their title fights. They can do something like that. So it would be interesting to see. This is going to be new, especially with them getting rid of the pay-per-view model. So I think they should do something to kind of to reward the fans, and to try to get the new eyeballs that's going to be on it every, wondering how often they do these. But, like I said, more exposure is better. And this is an opportunity to really dig in and get a lot of eyes on their product. So they should do something like that.
Just a really good idea. I think they're right on target the way it is. I was probably 20 years old when MMA type fighting started becoming mainstream, and going from Fox to ESPN and now to Paramount Plus and CBS. It seems like they're on the right track if you're a fan. Seems like everything's kind of coming together. The UFC is now more profitable than the NHL.
It's grown. I started watching early when it first came up, with Pride in the early days of UFC. And to see where it is now, it's remarkable to see how fast it's grown and how big it's grown. It's one of the top sports, especially for like our age. It's definitely taken over a lot of sports.
This weekend there is UFC 319 Hanson still on ESPN Plus pay-per-view, so we still have a few months left of the pay-per-view nonsense. This one is in Chicago on Saturday. The early prelims are at 6. The prelims start at 8, and the main card starts at 10. And tell us about the fights you'll be watching in 319, Hanson.
So this is a really good card. It's one of those where they got a lot of fun fights, and it's headlined by a really, really interesting title fight.
Ah,
Dricus du Plessis, champion from South Africa, and Hamzat Chimaev, who's kind of been like he's had a lot of steam behind him since he burst onto the scene a few years ago. He's a guy that a lot of people thought was going to be a multi-weight champion. He has had some health issues that's kind of slowed his role, so to speak. But he was, when he first came on, he was so fast growing. He was a guy that was fighting. It was during the COVID pandemic, so they were doing all the fights at the Apex. He was a guy that was fighting. I think he has a record for fighting twice in a 2-week span. Got 2 finishes, and then fought probably a month later. So he just came out of the gate, made a name for himself. Has a huge fan base. He's kind of been like a werewolf of the division, and it's a huge opportunity for him. He's finally getting his first title shot, and he's fighting a guy who is a very good champion. I mean, Dricus is a guy who came up.
that's right.
He's fought a lot of tough guys. He's beat them all. Both these guys are undefeated in the UFC. I think Dricus is 6-0 in the UFC, and Hamzat is 9-0 in the UFC. I know Dricus is on 11-fight win streak total. Hamzat has not lost a fight. He's 14-0. He's got all finishes, 6 by knockout, 6 submissions. He's got 9 in the first round. So this is a very big fight, a very interesting fight, and it's a fan favorite fight. You know, it's a lot of people are very interested in this fight because you don't really know how it's going to go. I think a lot of people think like I do. Hamzat, he's very dominant in the early rounds, but like I said, with his health issues in the past, he does tend to gas later in fights. He hasn't had a 5-round fight yet. It's going to be very interesting to see how he does in the late rounds if it gets to the late rounds. And Dricus is a guy who can get you to the late rounds. He's a tough guy. He survives the early rounds. And he was at one point, looked like he had issues with his gas tank, but in his last few fights on his title run, he's actually been better in the late rounds. So that's the most interesting part about this fight is you've got a guy who steamrolls people. I saw a stat the other day with Hamzat. Every fight he's had in the UFC, he's been able to take the person down within a minute of the start of the fight. So he's probably going to come with the same strategy. He's going to try to take Dricus down. He's going to try to submit him. But like I said, Dricus is tough. He's well-rounded. He's got a good ground game as well. And then, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see if it gets to the later rounds, how Hamzat does in the later rounds, and will he be able to survive once he gets to the later rounds? Because Dricus does put on a little bit of a pace. So that's what makes this fight very, very interesting is the fact that you have 2 completely different styles. You got a guy who's going to blitz you and pretty much use most of his energy in the first couple rounds. And then you got a guy who can fight for 25 minutes, and he's dangerous for all 25 minutes. So it's a very big fight. I just watched a press conference not too long ago. The crowd was just really into it. They're really behind Hamzat. So it's going to be a very fun fight.
All right, Hanson, I need you to call this one.
I'm going to go with Hamzat.
Ooh.
From what I've seen from him, I just think he is a small favorite, but he's been so dominant with his wrestling. The only person who's been able to kind of control his wrestling was Kamaru Usman, who is also a very good wrestler. Kamaru was actually on the Olympic team. He was an alternate for the Olympic team. So he was a very good wrestler. That's the only guy that's really been able to handle Hamzat's wrestling. I think he's going to be able to get Dricus down. I think he's going to be able to tap him out. I think he takes him down and strangles him. So I think Hamzat wins this fight.
By submission, huh?
Yeah, I think he's going to get the submission win in this one.
All right, I know there's another co-main here. It's a welterweight fight, but I want to talk about the other middleweight fight. That's a couple of fights before the main event because is Michael Page get the winner of this one? If he wins?
He's going to be up there. You know, he's a guy that's a fan favorite. The fans love this guy. He came from Bellator. He had a huge following there. Came to UFC. He's done well. He's won 3 of his 4 fights in the UFC. He's a finisher, so he's a guy that has highlights. That's why the fans like him. He's fighting a tough guy, Jared
Yeah.
Cannonier, who has
Not
title. It's not easy at all. This is one of those, they say style makes fights, and this is it. Cannonier's a bigger guy who likes to use his body. He is a power puncher. But Venom Page is a very slick stand-up fighter. He's got very good stand-up. So I don't know if Cannonier will try to stay on the feet with him, because Venom Page, he doesn't look like it. He's very long and lanky and kind of skinny for the division. But he's got power in his hands, power in his feet, power in his knees. He's a very good striker, a very dangerous striker. So both these guys are very good on the feet. But I think Cannonier would have the advantage on the ground if he could get it there. But Venom Page is tricky. He's like I said, he's a lanky guy. He moves very well. He has like a karate style base where he leaps in and out. So his striking is very quick. He can kind of lull you to sleep with the way he stands and hops up and down. And then boom, he can leap in and hurt you with something. And I think, with his fanfare, if he does go out there and win impressively, he could see himself in line for a title shot.
Who you think wins it?
I'm going to go with Venom Page. I think he's been on a roll lately. I think Cannonier's kind of on the back end of his career. Like I said, he has already fought for the title. And I think it's just his time is kind of passing him. And I think Venom Page is right in the thick of his. I think his striking is going to be too much. He's going to be too fast, too slick. Like I said, that karate style he uses where he leaps in and out, he's very dangerous. And I think he potentially could get a stoppage here. If he doesn't stop him, I see him winning by decision, but he could get a knockout here, which I think is what he'll go for. Like I said, I think if a nice impressive win here, I think he can get him. He'll be on a short list for a title shot for the middleweight belt.
All right, let's talk about Lerone Murphy and Aaron Pico. And this one, Hanson, is the closest to being a toss-up in all of the card, which, by the way, every fight is pretty close to a toss-up.
Yeah, they are. It's very close odds on all these fights. And with Pico and Murphy, you got Murphy who's on a roll. He's been in the UFC. He's had some big wins of late. And then Pico's a guy coming from Bellator. I think he was on like a 5-fight win streak when he came over from Bellator. He was a younger guy, a great wrestler. I think he was an Olympic guy with the wrestling. But he's also a guy who's trained a lot of boxing too. So he's one of those rare breeds that the younger guy that got into mixed martial arts and kind of tried to master both arts. So he's a very good wrestler. He does have very good power, very good boxing. I would say the only knock on Pico that you've seen is he's kind of chinny a little bit. When he gets hit, he has been able to get hurt. And it's one of those things where no matter where they come from, guys seem to struggle when they come to the UFC. Even the great ones that came over from other organizations, they just seem to struggle when they get to UFC. But when you listen to him, he doesn't sound like he has those nerves. He sounds very confident. He's kind of already looking past Lerone Murphy. He's kind of been talking about a title shot with Volkanovski. But Murphy's here to kind of wreck his plans. This is a short notice fight for Murphy. He's actually filling in for somebody. He was supposed to fight Mesrevov, who has been he's undefeated at featherweight, and he was actually in line for a title shot, but he got hurt. He's a guy who pulls out of a lot of fights, so I think this will probably drop him back in line. So this is a big opportunity for both these guys. An impressive fight here can get either one of them a title shot. And I'm actually going to go with the underdog. I think Lerone Murphy steals this fight. I think he gets it done. He's very fast on his feet. He's a slick fighter. He's dangerous close range, which is kind of where Pico likes to fight as well. And I think Murphy's going to surprise a lot of people here. And I actually think he might finish Pico and earn a title shot with this fight. He's coming in, like I say, he's a short notice fill-in. Dana always loves that, especially if you come in and put on a big show, which I'm looking for. I think he's going to do that. He's a confident kid himself, and I think he knows he's got an opportunity here. He knows he's got the spotlight on him, and I think he takes advantage of it, and I see Murphy getting the win.
Anything else from that card that jumps out at you?
I love this welterweight fight with Carlos Paredes and Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal's a guy who's been in the UFC for a while, very good stand-up fighter, clean boxer, power in both hands, coming off a finish of a former champion, Rafael Dos Santos. And then you got Pratis, who had been undefeated in UFC. He's coming off his first loss. His last fight, he didn't really, I don't know, it looked like he was a little skittish in that fight. He's a finisher too. He's got 21 wins, 16 by knockout. He fought Ian Machado McGarry, who's a very good fighter. Gary's a guy who likes to stall on people. He does use his wrestling a little bit. He's a guy who can wear on you. I think Pratis tried to save some of his energy in that fight because he did almost finish Gary in either the fourth or fifth round of that fight. He ended up losing the decision. So he's coming off his first loss, and since he's come to the UFC. So it'd be very interesting to see how he responds to that. He's a fan favorite. He comes to that group, the Fighting Nerds. All those guys were undefeated in the UFC except for his last loss. A very good camp. They finished fights. I think he gets back on track. Jeff Neal's a great opponent for that. That's going to be a very fun fight. It's one of those fights that you would think would lead off the pay-per-view, but it's so good it's going to be the third, co-main, as they say. But that's a very fun fight for a lot of people who know who these guys are. Like I said, people know who Jeff Neal is. This is a guy who's going to stand up, trade boxing. He's got good cardio, so he'll be there. And then Pratis, he's a wild striker himself with finishing power. So that's a very fun fight. I don't see that one going the distance. I think Pratis does win that fight. I think he gets a stoppage. I think he rolls on and moves on to another big fight, maybe gets a rematch with Ian Gary.
All right, Hanson, because of the big UFC Paramount Plus news, we didn't save a lot of time for what is a pretty big boxing weekend, some interesting fights. I'll go ahead and tell the listeners that coming up, starting next week, is the first week of season 2 of the Central Indiana Sports Report, and we will have reactions to all of these fights no later than Monday for you. And Hanson, what are you looking forward to most about this weekend in the boxing
Well,
world?
I'm really excited for this boxing card. It's one of those that's it's fights that lead to fights. So it's one of those cards where you got a lot of guys that's up and coming. The main event of this Saudi Arabia card, you've got a featherweight bout with number 2 ranked Nick Ball, number 3 Sam Goodman, two very good fighters. Nick
Both
Ball
unbeaten.
22-0. Yes, you got 22-0, 20-0. Now Nick Ball is kind of a big favorite. He's also who I predict to win this fight. Nick Ball's a very slick fighter, very good fighter. He's got an opportunity here. The featherweight class right now is one of the hottest in boxing. We just saw a couple weeks ago, we had Shushu Carrington on there. You got Rafael Espinoza, who's a very good fighter. So that class is hot right now, and these two have an opportunity. They're headlining the Saudi Arabia card. It's a big card. It's in the afternoon, so it should have a lot of eyeballs on it. Nick Ball, he's coming in with wins over TJ Donahue and Raymond Ford. Goodman has also beat Donahue. He's coming off of a win over who was 19-1, Cesar Espinoza. So both of them are kind of on a roll right now. So this is a good time for both of them to fight. Like I said, they're ranked 2 and 3. I think Nick Ball gets this win, and I think he sets himself up with either a WBO title shot with Espinoza or a WBC title shot with Shushu Carrington. So, like I said, these fights are leading to big fights.
Hanson, you think it goes the distance?
I do. I think this one goes the distance. I think Sam Goodman's tough enough to last. A lot of people think Nick Ball's going to win by stoppage. Nick Ball's not really a stoppage guy. He does have 13 finishes in his 22 wins, but he hasn't really finished anybody of late. And I think Goodman's better than that. I don't think Goodman's a guy that's going to go in there and get finished. I see this one going the distance. The next fight's another big one. It's in the same featherweight class. You've got Raymond Ford, who, like I just mentioned, he had lost to Nick Ball, but that's been his only loss of his career. He's 17-1. He's actually ranked number 4 in the featherweight division, and then he's fighting Abraham Nova. Now, this is kind of a get back on track fight for Ford. He is 2-0 since his loss to Ball. He looked fantastic in his last fight against Thomas Mates. I think that was in April. So this is kind of another fight for him to get on track. You know, Nova's a tough guy, but he is 1-2-1 in his last 4. He's 24-3 overall. Now, he does have 17 knockouts, so he is kind of a big puncher for the featherweight division. But Raymond Ford's a big favorite, minus 800 going into this one. And like I said, I think this is a fight for him to get on track, to get back up there, and for him to get another big fight. I think, he wins this fight, you're looking at maybe a Stephen Fulton fight to maybe see who fights for a title. Two guys that have one loss, I think, apiece. So this is a big fight for Raymond Ford. Like I said, he looked very good in his last fight. I think he'll continue that role, and I think he beats Nova. Now, I do think he can stop Nova. He's not really a big finisher himself, but he does have a tendency to finish guys he should finish. I said that a couple weeks ago, talking about Xander Zayas. I thought he should finish the fight when he's got the opportunity to finish fights. Ford is that guy. Ford will finish you if you give him the opportunity to. I think this is a fight he can get a finish. So I look for Raymond Ford to get a finish here, move on to who knows, maybe he gets a rematch with Nick Ball. I think Nick Ball's a little bit ahead of him. Like I said, I think he'll be fighting for a title. But Raymond Ford put himself in a really good spot with a good performance Saturday afternoon.
Nova doesn't have a lot of fights go the distance.
He doesn't. He's a finisher, or he's going to get finished. And that's why I'm thinking that I think we're going to see Raymond Ford finish Nova.
And a decent heavyweight fight with a pretty good prospect.
Huge heavyweight fight. Moses Itauma is one of the biggest prospects we've had in heavyweight in the last few years. It's one of those situations where, is it too early for him? I know Turki Ali already wants him to fight Usyk if he wins this fight, but he's just 20 years old. You kind of don't want to rush these kids, especially in the heavyweight division. But Itauma has looked great. 12-0, 10 knockouts. He's knocked out 8 straight. 8 of his last fights have all been knockouts, and nobody has made it past 2 rounds with him. He takes everybody out early. He's super fast for a heavyweight. I don't think I've seen a heavyweight put combinations together like he does. Super fast hand speed, and he's got big power in both hands. He's a very dangerous fighter. He's only ranked 27 in the world right now, which is kind of crazy to me with the way he's came up. But they have kind of made it slow for him. He hasn't fought any of the big names. This is going to be his first one. He's fighting Dillian Whyte, who has fought everybody. Dillian Whyte has fought a who's who of heavyweight. He's 31-3. He's got 21 knockouts, so he's very dangerous too. I know he's a big underdog. He's plus 600. Itauma is minus 1,000, so he's a huge favorite. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those where it's not going to go the distance. It's not going to go past 5 rounds. But, you have to respect Whyte. He's a guy, 2 of his 3 losses are Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, which aren't, there's no scrubs there. And then he had back-to-back wars with Povetkin where they both stopped each other. He's beat Joseph Parker. He's beat Chisora twice. The only thing with Dillian Whyte is he's 37. Now, I know in heavyweight you can be a little bit older than that, but all 3 of his losses he has been stopped. So he can be stopped. And I think Itauma rose. I think he continues his ascend towards the heavyweight title. I don't know if he's ready to fight Usyk if he wins this fight, but he's definitely going to get another big name after this. And I think he knocks Dillian Whyte out sometime within the first 4 rounds.
Yeah, let me tell you, if you beat Dillian Whyte, you're a pretty good fighter.
You're definitely on your way. Like we said before, I think Joseph Parker deserves the next title shot. I wish they would give it to him, but I could see if Moses goes in there and takes care of business like he should, maybe he gets Joseph Parker next for a title eliminator. This is for the heavyweight. They do the intercontinental belts, which is kind of basically a title eliminator. So This is that. I think Itauma will need one more after this before he fights Usyk. But who knows? Usyk's kind of big shark hunting right now. I think he knows that he's on the back end of his career. He wants the big money fights. And if that's the fight Turkey wants, if he throws enough money at Usyk, that may be the fight he gets. So huge fight in the heavyweight division. Like I said, this is one of the biggest prospects that we've had in heavyweight in a while. So it's going to be very interesting to see if he goes in there and puts on a show, what they do for him next. It could be Usyk or it could be Joseph Parker for a title eliminator. So very, very big fight, very interesting fight, and I can't wait to really watch him. I've enjoyed watching his last few fights. Like I said, the hand speed is something that really stands out to me for a heavyweight. He's very exciting, especially with his knockout ability, and man, I can't wait for this fight.
Seems more likely that Itauma would fight somebody like Richard Torres, kind of an eliminator kind of fight, probably before Usyk. Mike Tyson did it at 20, but that's just too early probably to be going against grown men.
Yeah, especially when, like I said, they've kind of taken it easy with him as up to this point. Doesn't really have any big names on his record right now. So yeah, I think that, even if he doesn't get the title shot, or I mean, maybe they throw him in there with Du Bois coming off of a knockout. Who knows?
Good
Maybe
one.
try to get in a couple of names on there before he fights for the title, which is what I would do with him, just to try to
Yes.
draw more eyeballs to it. But who knows? I know boxing is a very different sport than what than what it should be. They make a lot of crazy decisions there, so be interesting to see what they do next, but I do expect him to roll Saturday.
All right, Hanson, let's do this again after all the fights this weekend.
Hey, I can't wait.
Thank you so much to Hanson for joining the Central Indiana Sports Report once again, and to you for listening. Please share this podcast with a fight fan in your life and help us spread the word that the Central Indiana Sports Report is here talking about what Central Indiana sports fans are interested in every single day. Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media. And I love Susie.